Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The air in the Port Charles police station was always the same, a stale cocktail of stale coffee, industrial cleaner, and the faint, metallic tang of desperation. For Detective Harrison Chase, it was the scent of his life's work, a vocation he had entered with the unshakable belief in a simple, binary truth, right and wrong, lawful and criminal, good and evil. Lately, that binary code had been corrupted, its lines blurred into a maddening, gray static. And at the center of that static was a slip of paper, folded neatly in his pocket, upon which were written 6 words that had become his personal torment. He pulled it out again, the motion now a nervous tick. The paper was soft at the creases, the ink slightly smudged from the sweat of his palm. Willow's 6 words, he'd scrawled at the top. And beneath it, in his wife's elegant, looping handwriting, a message that had been meant for someone else entirely: Chase chooses to play fair. He had found it by accident, tucked inside a book of poetry she'd been reading. A book given to her by Hamilton Finn. The context was missing, but the implication was a shard of ice in his heart. It was a prediction, a piece of a strategy, a line in a script he hadn't been given. Chase chooses to play fair. It sounded like a compliment, a testament to his character. But in the secret, coded communication between his wife and another man, it felt like a condemnation, an assessment of a predictable, pliable tool. Playing fair. What did that even mean anymore? In the world of Port Charles, playing fair was a luxury few could afford and a weakness many exploited. It was a city where mob bosses operated with impunity, where respected doctors hid heinous crimes, where love was a weapon and family a battlefield. To play fair in such an environment was to willingly enter a knife fight with a teaspoon. His desk was a monument to this chaos. Case files were stacked in precarious towers, a visual representation of the moral quagmire he was wading through. The biggest, most volatile file was labeled Pikeman. An arms-dealing operation of staggering scope, its tendrils had reached into the highest echelons of the city's power structure. He had been working it for months, chasing shadows and hitting walls erected by lawyers, bribes, and fear. He was close, he could feel it. He had a key witness, a low-level enforcer named Leo Mirko, who was ready to flip. Mirko was a small fish, but he could lead them to the Barracudas, the elusive mastermind known only as the Ouroboros, and, more pressingly, to the local financiers who were laundering the money and greasing the wheels. And that's where the 6 words bled into his professional life. Because one of those names, a name that kept bubbling to the surface of the pikeman cesspool, was Hamilton Finn. Finn. The man who had saved Willow's life. The man who had been a rock for her during her cancer treatment, a constant, caring presence when Chase, riddled with his own guilt and fear, had sometimes struggled to be what she needed. Finn, the brilliant, troubled, recovering alcoholic who had somehow found his way back into the light. Finn, who Willow looked at with a fondness that went beyond gratitude, a connection that Chase, in his most insecure moments, feared he could never replicate. The evidence against Finn was circumstantial, a chain of financial transactions that was damning but not definitive. Wire transfers from shell companies linked to pikemen had found their way into an account Finn had access to, an old research grant fund he'd mostly forgotten about. Finn swore he knew nothing about it, that he was being set up. He was frantic, terrified, not for himself, but for his daughter, Violet. He'd begged Chase to look deeper, to see the truth. "You know me, Chase," Finn had pleaded, his eyes wide with a desperate sincerity. "I've made mistakes, God knows I have. But this? Arms dealing? I'm a doctor. I save lives. I would never. I couldn't." And Chase wanted to believe him. He wanted to believe the man who had given him back his wife, the man who was a good father, a friend. To believe him was the easy path, the unfair path. It would mean looking the other way, burying the evidence, using his position as a detective to subtly steer the investigation away from Finn. It would be a betrayal of his badge, but it would secure his marriage. It would make Willow happy. It would prove he wasn't the rigid, unbending Boy Scout she perhaps thought he was. Chase chooses to play fair. The words were a taunt. Was he so transparent? Was his integrity just a predictable character trait to be manipulated? If he went easy on Finn, was he proving her right, that he was so bound by his own simplistic code that he would follow the evidence blindly, even if it destroyed an innocent man? Or was he proving her wrong by breaking that very code? The paradox was a Mobius strip in his mind, leading him in endless, exhausting circles. He stared at the financial records on his computer screen. There was an anomaly, a tiny digital ghost in the machine that he couldn't shake. A single, encrypted server that had routed the transactions through Finn's account. The tech guys had written it off as a standard obfuscation technique, but Chase's instinct, the very instinct that made him a good detective, was prickling. It was too clean, too perfect. It felt like a framed job, but a brilliantly executed one. "You're still on that?" His partner, Detective Dante Falconeri, dropped a fresh file on his desk, the sound making Chase jump. Dante had the weary eyes of a man who had seen too much and the calm demeanor of one who had somehow found a way to live with it. He glanced at Chase's screen. The Finn lead. "It's thin, Chase." "It's there, Dante," Chase said, his voice tighter than he intended. "It's there," Dante agreed, leaning against the desk. "But is it real? I've known Finn a long time. This doesn't fit." Sometimes, the simplest explanation is the right one. Someone is using him as a patsy. "Playing fair means following the evidence, not my gut feeling about a man's character," Chase replied, the words tasting like ash in his mouth. Dante studied him for a long moment. "Is this about the evidence, Chase? Or is it about something else? You've been off for weeks. You're jumping at shadows. Talk to me." How could he talk about it? How could he explain the corrosive doubt seeded by 6 simple words? How could he admit that his marriage, the one solid thing he thought he had built out of the chaos of his life, felt like it was resting on a foundation of sand? That every time Willow smiled at him, he saw her writing those words for another man? "It's about the job," Chase said, the lie feeling flimsy even to himself. "I just need to be sure." "The job will eat you alive if you let it become personal," Dante said softly. "Trust me, I know." He pushed off the desk. "The commissioner wants an update on Pikeman by end of day. He's getting pressure from the mayor's office. They want a scalp. A scalp. Finn's scalp." Chase spent the next few hours in a fugue state, re-interviewing witnesses, re-examining forensics from a related crime scene, a warehouse on the docks that had been used as a pikeman stash house. There had been a shooting there. A security guard was in a coma. The weight of that, the real-world violence of this case, pressed down on him. This wasn't an abstract financial crime. People were getting hurt. Families were being shattered. If Finn was involved, even unwittingly, he had to be held accountable. If he wasn't, then the real culprit was still out there, armed and dangerous. His phone buzzed. Willow. His heart did a complicated, painful flip-flop. "Hey, you. Are you going to be home for dinner? I'm making that pasta you like." Her voice was warm, loving. It was the voice that had pulled him back from the brink so many times. He wanted nothing more than to say yes, to go home, to lose himself in the normalcy of a shared meal, to forget about Pikeman and Finn and the 6 words. Chase chooses to play fair. I don't know, Willow," he said, his voice rough. "This Pikeman case, it's blowing up. I might be here all night." A pause on the other end. He could feel her disappointment, a physical thing transmitted through the phone line. "Okay. Just, be careful. I love you. I love you, too." He ended the call and put his head in his hands. He was trapped. Every path led to ruin. To arrest Finn was to potentially destroy an innocent man and shatter his relationship with Willow. To clear Finn without absolute proof was a dereliction of duty, a betrayal of everything he stood for, and it would let a monster like the Ouroboros remain free. It was then, in the depths of his despair, that he remembered Leo Mirko. The small fish. He had been stalling on bringing Mirko in for a formal debrief, afraid of spooking the bigger targets. But now, time was a luxury he no longer had. I'm bringing in Mirko, he announced to Dante. Today. Now. Dante looked up, surprised. You sure? We were going to let him swim a little longer, see who he meets. The pressure's on. We need what he knows. Maybe he can give us something that either confirms Finn's involvement or clears him outright. It was a gamble. A huge one. 2 hours later, Leo Mirko, a weaselly man with nervous eyes, sat in interrogation room B, chain-smoking under the disapproving glare of the no-smoking sign. Chase and Dante sat across from him. You promised me protection, Mirko whined. You bring me in here like this, my people will see. I'm a dead man. Then you'd better give us something worth dying for, Chase said, his voice flat, all emotion buried under a layer of professional granite. The money. The transfers to the Finn account. Tell me about them. Mirko's eyes darted between them. I don't know nothing about no finances. I'm muscle. I move boxes. Boxes full of weapons that have killed people, Dante interjected. A security guard is in a coma because of those boxes. That makes you an accessory to attempted murder. How's life in Sing Sing, Leo? Mirko paled. I heard things, okay? Just whispers. Whisper louder, Chase commanded. The doc. Finn. He was a clean face. A respected guy. The Ouroboros needed a name like that to move money. Someone no one would suspect. Chase's stomach tightened. So he's involved. I didn't say that. Mirko said quickly. I said he was a name they used. I don't know if he was a willing participant or just a useful idiot. The guy at the top, he's a ghost. But he's got a fixer. Someone inside, someone who makes problems go away. A fixer inside where? Dante pressed. Inside the system, Mirko said, lowering his voice. A cop. The air went out of the room. Chase felt a cold dread trickle down his spine. A dirty cop. It was the oldest story in the book, and the most destructive. A name, Leo. Give me a name, Chase said, leaning forward. I don't know. I swear. They don't use names. Just, he's the one who told us about the Finn account. Said it was perfect. Low activity, connected to a legit figure. He was the one who orchestrated the whole frame-up. Why frame Finn? Chase asked, his mind racing. Mirko shrugged. I don't know. Maybe the doc was in the way. Maybe he knew something. Or maybe the fixer had a personal grudge. Who knows? The point is, the fixer is the key. He's the one who can lead you to the Ouroboros. He's the one who set up Finn. Chase stood up abruptly, the chair screeching against the linoleum floor. He walked out of the interrogation room, Dante on his heels. A dirty cop, Dante muttered, running a hand over his face. It's the worst-case scenario. It changes everything, Chase said, his heart hammering against his ribs. If Mirko is telling the truth, then Finn is innocent. The entire case against him was manufactured by one of our own. It's a big if, Chase. Mirko would say anything to save his own skin. This could be a diversion. Or it could be the truth, Chase insisted, the binary clarity he craved finally re-emerging. We have to follow this. We have to find the fixer. But how? The fixer would be careful, hidden. They would have access to all their investigative moves. They would know Mirko was talking. The only way to smoke them out was to proceed exactly as the fixer would expect. To play the part of the predictable, by-the-book detective. Chase chooses to play fair. For the first time, the words didn't feel like a taunt. They felt like a strategy. His predictability, his unwavering commitment to the rules, could be his greatest weapon. The fixer would be expecting him to arrest Finn based on the financial evidence. It was the logical, fair next step. So that's what he had to do. He laid out his plan to Dante, who listened with a growing look of alarm. You want to arrest Finn? Publicly? Chase, do you have any idea what that will do to him? To his career? To Violet? It's the only way, Chase said, his voice grim. If the fixer thinks his frame-up is working, he'll get complacent. He might make a mistake. He might contact the Ouroboros to report his success. We'll be watching every wire, every financial trail, every communication Finn has. We'll use Finn as bait to catch the real criminals. It's ruthless, Dante said. It's necessary, Chase replied, the conviction in his own voice surprising him. He was no longer the conflicted husband. He was the detective. And this was the only play that served both justice and the truth. The arrest was a scene of pure, unadulterated horror. Chase and Dante found Finn at General Hospital, just finishing his rounds. In the middle of the bustling corridor, surrounded by gaping nurses and patients, Chase recited the Miranda rights. Finn's face went from confusion to disbelief to utter betrayal. Chase? What are you doing? This is a mistake. You know it is. I'm sorry, Finn. Based on the evidence we have, I'm placing you under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, and aiding and abetting an arms trafficking organization. The evidence is fake. I told you. Willow, she knows I'm not capable of this. Finn's voice broke on Willow's name, and it was like a physical blow to Chase. As he led a handcuffed Finn through the hospital, the stares of their colleagues burning into him, Chase felt a part of his soul wither and die. This was playing fair. This was following the evidence to its logical, brutal conclusion. He was proving Willow's words true in the most devastating way possible. The fallout was immediate and volcanic. Willow was waiting for him at home, her face pale with a fury he had never seen before. How could you, she whispered, her voice trembling. How could you do that to him? To us? After everything he did for me? For us? Willow, it's not what it seems, he tried to explain, but the words sounded hollow. He couldn't tell her the plan. The entire operation depended on secrecy. The evidence. I don't care about the evidence, she shouted, tears finally spilling over. I care about people. About loyalty. You arrested a good man, a broken man, in front of the entire hospital. You've destroyed him. And for what? To prove what a good little detective you are? Chase chooses to play fair? Is that it? You're so obsessed with your black and white world that you can't see the gray, you can't see the human being standing right in front of you. He stood there and took it, every word a lash. This was the cost. This was the price of his choice. He had chosen the job over his wife's happiness, the law over her peace of mind. He had, in her eyes, become the unfeeling automaton she had perhaps always feared he was. The next 48 hours were a special kind of hell. Finn sat in a cell, a broken man, while his lawyer raged about a mistrial and police misconduct. The press had a field day. Hero doctor or arms dealer, screamed the headlines. Violet was placed in the care of Elizabeth Baldwin, her small, confused face haunting Chase's every waking moment. But inside the silent, secret heart of the Pikeman Task Force, the plan was working. With Finn publicly in custody, the digital and surveillance nets they had cast began to twitch. The fixer, believing the coast was clear, grew bold. A series of encrypted messages were intercepted, sent from a terminal inside the police station itself to a blind server in Cyprus. The tech team worked frantically to trace it. The money trail, which had seemed to dead end at Finn, suddenly sprang back to life, flowing through a new, hidden channel. And then, they got it. A name. The fixer. It was Lieutenant Detective Marcus Pierce. A 20-year veteran, a man with a wall full of commendations, a man who had been Dante's mentor. He was the one who had been subtly steering the investigation, burying reports, losing evidence, and ultimately, framing Hamilton Finn. The reason for framing Finn became clear as they dug deeper. Years ago, Finn had treated Pierce's wife for a rare heart condition. She had died on the operating table. It wasn't Finn's fault, the condition was inoperable. But Pierce, in his grief, had blamed Finn, the arrogant doctor who had promised a miracle. The Pikeman investigation had presented him with the perfect opportunity for revenge, to destroy Finn's life and career while simultaneously protecting his new, lucrative criminal enterprise. Pierce was the Ouroboros' inside man. And he was about to meet his boss. The trap was set at the same dockside warehouse. Chase and a heavily armed tactical team surrounded the building. Inside, Pierce was meeting with his superior, the man they had been hunting for months, Konstantin Vanda, a ruthless international criminal with ties to half the terror organizations in Europe. Vanda was the Ouroboros. From their surveillance van, Chase and Dante watched the feed from a body cam on an undercover officer. Pierce and Vanda were exchanging a briefcase full of bearer bonds, the next phase of their operation. "It's time," Dante said, his hand on his weapon. Chase gave the signal. The raid was a controlled explosion of violence. The doors burst open. "Police! Freeze!" The shouts echoed in the cavernous space. Vanda's men went for their weapons, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The firefight was short, brutal, and decisive. Chase went straight for Pierce. The older detective looked at him, not with fear, but with a weary contempt. "Chase," Pierce spat. "The Boy Scout. I knew you'd be the one to ruin it. So predictable." "You framed an innocent man," Chase said, his voice cold as he slapped cuffs on his former superior. "You betrayed your badge. You're done." As Pierce was led away, he laughed, a dry, hollow sound. "I did what I had to do. Finn deserved what he got. And you played your part perfectly. Just like I knew you would." The words should have stung, but they didn't. Because Chase had played his part, but not in the way Pierce thought. He had played fair, and he had won. In the aftermath, 3 people were sent to jail. Lieutenant Marcus Pierce, for corruption, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Konstantin Vanda, the Ouroboros, for arms trafficking, money laundering, and a host of other international crimes. And Leo Mirko, for his role as an accomplice, though his cooperation would likely earn him a reduced sentence. The Pikeman operation was dismantled. The city was safer. It was the biggest victory of Chase's career. But when he walked into the interrogation room where Hamilton Finn sat, the charges against him officially dropped, there was no victory in his heart. Finn looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and full of a pain that went beyond his 2 days in jail. "You knew," Finn said quietly. "The whole time. You knew I was being set up, and you arrested me anyway." "It was the only way to get Pierce and Vanda," Chase explained, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "I couldn't tell anyone. I'm sorry, Finn. For everything you went through." Finn just shook his head, a world of disappointment and shattered trust in the gesture. "You used me as bait. You let them destroy my reputation, terrify my daughter, all in the name of your case." He stood up. "You got your bad guys, Chase. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." Chase watched him leave, knowing that some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. He went home to an empty house. Willow was at her mother's. A note on the kitchen table, written in the same elegant hand as the 6 words that had started it all, explained that she needed time. Time to process. Time to understand the man she had married, a man who could orchestrate such a cold, calculated, and effective form of justice. "I love you," the note ended, "but I don't know if I can live with the choices you make." He sat alone in the silence, the hero of the hour, the detective who had broken the biggest case of his generation. 3 criminals were behind bars, their threat to Port Charles neutralized. He had played fair. He had followed the evidence, no matter how personally painful, and he had won. So why did it feel so much like a loss? The 6 words were no longer a taunt or a strategy. They were his epitaph, carved into the ruins of his personal life. Chase chooses to play fair. And in doing so, he had saved the city, but at the cost of the very things that made that city a home. The gray static had cleared, revealing a stark, lonely landscape where justice was served, but happiness was the price paid. And he was left to wonder, staring into the dark, if playing fair was a virtue, or the greatest curse a man could bear. Willow had no idea that 6 simple words would change the course of several lives, but the weight of those words pressed against her chest from the moment she said them. She stood in the quiet corner of General Hospital, her fingers curled tightly around her phone, replaying the message she'd delivered to Chase only an hour earlier. "You need to tell the truth." Those were the 6 words, gentle, firm, and terrifying in their implications. Willow knew Chase was a good man, almost painfully so, but asking him to expose a secret capable of destroying reputations, relationships, and freedom was no small request. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that fairness shouldn't be optional anymore. Too many people had been hurt by lies layered on top of lies. When Chase looked at her earlier, blue eyes clouded with conflict, she saw the man she once loved fighting between loyalty and integrity. She also saw the moment he realized he had no choice but to step forward. Chase walked slowly through the station now, each step feeling heavier than the last. The hum of phones, officers chatting, and papers shuffling faded into background noise. He felt like he was underwater. His partner, Dante, studied him from across the room with a raised eyebrow. "You look like you're walking into a firing squad," Dante muttered, leaning against his desk as Chase approached. Chase let out a humorless breath. "Feels like it." Dante folded his arms. "You want to tell me what's going on?" Chase hesitated, but Willow's voice echoed again inside his mind. "You need to tell the truth." Chase swallowed hard. "I'm about to blow up 3 lives, maybe more." Dante's expression shifted, concern, curiosity, and understanding. "You know lying never sits right with you, so you might as well rip the bandage off." Chase nodded, though his stomach churned. He had made his decision, but that didn't make it hurt less. Some truths were more like detonations. Brooklyn sat inside the Quartermain living room, unaware of the storm gathering at the PCPD. She was pacing near the fireplace, frustrated over a completely different problem. "I swear, every time something settles, something else goes wrong," she vented as Lois raised an eyebrow from the sofa. "You say that like it's new," Lois replied with a smirk. Brooke groaned. "I just need one day, where nobody is lying, scheming, or blackmailing anyone." Lois laughed. "Sweetheart, this is Port Charles." Brooke opened her mouth to argue, but her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and froze. "A message from Chase, I need to talk to you. Now." Lois picked up instantly on the tension. "What's wrong?" Brooke shook her head. "I don't know. But that's the kind of message Chase sends when the world's about to collapse." Lois's expression sobered. "Then brace yourself." Meanwhile, Trina was at the art gallery, locking up early after a long day. She had no idea that she, too, would be drawn into Chase's moral crossroads. She gathered her portfolio and turned off the lights, ready to head home. But as she approached the door, Spencer appeared like a shadow drifting from the street. "Trina." His voice was soft, pained. She crossed her arms. "What are you doing here?" Spencer stepped closer. "I had to see you. There's something I need to tell you before the police find out." Trina's jaw tightened. "What did you do now?" Spencer swallowed, eyes flickering with guilt. "It's not just me. It's me. Esme, and someone else you're not going to like. It's bad, Trina." She inhaled slowly, bracing herself. "How bad?" Spencer whispered, "Jail bad." Trina closed her eyes as dread coiled inside her. She didn't know yet that Chase was already preparing to confirm exactly that. At the PCPD, Chase finally entered the interrogation room where Jordan was waiting. She stood with her arms folded, the sharp authority in her posture unmistakable. "You said you had something urgent," she said calmly. Chase nodded. "I need to file a statement about a cover-up involving Esme Prince, Spencer Cassadine, and Mason Gatlin." Jordan's face didn't change, though a flicker of interest sparked in her eyes. "That's quite a combination," she said. "Explain." Chase sat down, steadying himself. Months ago, Esme was involved in an incident that should have been reported. Instead, Spencer helped her hide her role and falsify part of the timeline. Mason found out later and used it to blackmail both of them for money and favors. I recently got proof, recordings, texts, and an eyewitness account. Jordan leaned in. "And why come forward now?" Chase hesitated for only a moment. "Because someone I trust reminded me that playing fair matters." Willow's name hung unspoken between the lines. Jordan listened carefully. "Chase, you realize this will have consequences. Esme, Spencer, and Mason could all face jail time." Chase nodded. "I know." She studied him for another long moment before speaking. "All right. Let's do this by the book. Start from the beginning." Chase took a breath and began recounting everything, how Spencer had confessed to him in a moment of panic, how Esme's involvement had become undeniable, how Mason had leveraged the situation for his own manipulative ends. Jordan typed as he spoke, her calm professionalism steadier than the storm inside Chase's chest. The truth felt heavy as he laid it out, but there was also a strange sense of relief. This was the right thing to do. Finally. Back at the Quartermain mansion, Brooke had texted Chase demanding he meet her immediately. She paced the room until the front door opened and Chase walked in, looking worn down and conflicted. Brooke approached him with panic in her eyes. "What happened?" "That message scared me." Chase exhaled. "I told Jordan the truth. All of it. About Spencer, Esme, and Mason." Brooke blinked rapidly. "Wait, what? Why?" Chase looked at her with quiet determination. "Because it was wrong to keep it quiet. And because Willow reminded me that the truth doesn't stop being the truth just because it's inconvenient." Brooke's breath hitched. "So what happens now?" Chase rubbed the back of his neck. "Jordan's issuing warrants." Brooke stared at him, stunned. 3 people? "Chase, this is going to explode." He didn't deny it. "I know." At the gallery, Trina listened as Spencer explained the whole ugly situation, his involvement, Esme's manipulations, Mason's threats. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "I thought I was protecting us. Protecting you. I didn't want this spiraling into something that would drag you down again." Trina shook her head. "Spencer, you can't pick and choose the truth. It doesn't work that way." He stopped and looked at her with desperation. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'll tell the police. I will." She sighed. "It might be too late. If Chase found out, he won't sit on it." Spencer's face paled. "Chase? Chase knows?" Trina nodded. "And if Willow's anywhere near this, you can bet honesty is winning today." Spencer muttered a curse. "I have to get ahead of this," but the moment he reached for the door, 2 officers appeared. "Spencer Cassadine?" Spencer closed his eyes. "Yeah. You're under arrest."